Welcome back to The Explainer. Look, if you're serious about your training, you are probably obsessed with your wearable data. I mean, we all are, right? We track our sleep, our resting heart rate, our daily recovery scores with the exact same intensity that we track our mileage or our heavy lifts. It honestly feels like we finally unlocked the ultimate objective truth and just strapped it right to our wrists. But what if I told you there are some massive hidden traps lurking inside all those numbers? Today, we're going to build a complete, actionable guide on how to actually use heart rate variability and perceived recovery status to monitor your true performance. We're going to help you avoid the biometric illusions that are secretly sabotaging athletes everywhere. Let's get into it.
So I want to start by challenging a core belief you probably hold right now. Picture this. You wake up, you glance at your smartwatch or your app, and boom, you see this glowing green 100% recovered score. Your immediate thought is obviously, awesome, I am ready to push hard today. But what if that quote-unquote excellent recovery score isn't a green light at all? What if it's actually a blaring warning sign from a body that is actively shutting down? To understand how our smartwatches can literally lie to us, we first need to understand the language they're trying to speak.
Okay, let's briefly touch on the basics. Heart rate variability, or HRV. Now specifically, we're looking at a metric called LnRMSSD, which is really just a fancy mathematical way to smooth out the raw data. As you know, HRV measures the tiny millisecond fluctuations in time between your actual heartbeats. But here's the absolute secret to all of this. HRV is not a direct measure of your muscular recovery. It's actually a window straight into your autonomic nervous system. It tells us how your brain and your body are managing stress. It doesn't just hand you a simple health grade.
Think of your autonomic nervous system as being in a constant, 24/7 tug-of-war between two competing forces. On one side, you've got your sympathetic activity. That's your classic fight or flight response. This is the system jacking up your heart rate and getting you ready for action, whether that's a heavy sprint or, a super stressful meeting at work. And on the exact opposite side is your parasympathetic activity, your rest and digest mode. This system slows the heart down, promotes deep recovery, and repairs your tissues. So HRV is simply the real-time reflection of that ongoing tug-of-war.
To really make sense of this, I love this analogy. Think of your HRV as the check engine light on your car's dashboard. It gives you objective, raw, hard data. But a dashboard light doesn't tell you exactly how the car is driving out on the road, right? For that, you need the mechanic's intuition. And for our bodies, that intuition is your perceived recovery status, or PRS. It's your subjective, honest feeling of readiness. You absolutely need both the objective warning light and the subjective human intuition to know if your engine is truly ready to race today. Because if you only rely on that dashboard, things can go horribly wrong.
And here is where we get into the dark side of wearable data. Have you guys heard of REDS? Relative Energy Deficiency in Sport. This happens when an athlete is chronically underfueling, basically burning way more calories than they're taking in. When you do that for too long, your body panics and goes into this extreme metabolic conservation mode. It suppresses your thyroid, tanks your reproductive hormones, and just severely downregulates your nervous system to save energy. But here's the terrifying part. To a smartwatch, this extreme shutdown actually looks like elite fitness. Your resting heart rate might drop into the 30s, and your HRV stays deceptively high simply because your body is forcing a rest state to keep you from starving. So your watch is constantly telling you that you're fully recovered, while in reality you're dealing with chronic fatigue, wrecked sleep, freezing cold hands and toes, and a total plateau in your performance. Take a look at the stark contrast here between a truly healthy adaptation and dangerous physiological suppression. A healthy athlete who is properly adapting to their training is going to show a stable HRV and a slowly declining resting heart rate, but crucially, that's paired with high mental drive and great energy. And underfueled athletes suffering from REDS will also show a high HRV and a falling resting heart rate, but they'll feel completely miserable, chronic fatigue, cold intolerance, the whole shebang. Wearables are great at capturing data, but they cannot interpret your physiology. Your smartwatch literally cannot tell the difference between you becoming a fair athlete and you starving your own metabolism.
And this is exactly why we have to pivot to the solution, relying on that mechanic's intuition. Enter the Perceived Recovery Status, or the PRS scale. This is a scientifically validated 11-point subjective scale ranging from 0 to 10. A 0 means you are completely wrecked, extremely fatigued, poorly recovered. A 10 means you feel fully energetic and you're ready to absolutely crush your workout. I know, it sounds almost too simple, right? Just rate how you feel. But the research shows that your internal perception naturally integrates all the physical, mental, and hormonal stressors that your piece of tech completely misses. Let's look at the proof. There's this fantastic recent MDPI study looking at competitive sprinters, and it perfectly illustrates why blending this subjective feeling with your objective data is a real game changer. The researchers tracked 56 highly trained sprinters, both men and women, over a 5-day in-season training block. Every single morning, they recorded the athlete's HRV and had them score their subjective PRS. Then, later that afternoon, they made them run a 20-meter absolute maximal sprint. The whole point was to figure out which morning metric actually predicted who would be the fastest out on the track.
The results, honestly, they're brilliant. Both metrics nailed it. Having a higher morning HRV was associated with significantly faster 20-meter sprint times, and having a higher morning subjective PRS score was also associated with significantly faster times. This proves without a doubt that the objective physiological recovery of your nervous system and your subjective psychological perception of readiness both independently dictate your explosive power. You literally can't ignore one for the other.
But here's a massive takeaway from the research, and it's a fascinating gender difference we absolutely have to highlight. For the male athletes, the raw HRV data was actually a slightly stronger predictor of their afternoon sprint times. But for the female athletes, their subjective PRS score was the stronger, far more reliable predictor of how fast they would run. Why is that? Well, female HRV is heavily influenced by natural hormonal fluctuations, things like estrogen and progesterone shifting across the menstrual cycle. That can introduce a lot of noise into the daily HRV data. For women, their subjective perception acts as this incredible internal filter, seamlessly integrating both physical fatigue and hormonal shifts to give a much truer picture of their daily readiness.
So how do we actually use all this? How do we build this into a daily, usable guide for your morning routine? It really just comes down to 4 simple steps that you need to execute every morning. Wake up, record your HRV flawlessly, score your PRS honestly, and then adjust your daily training based on what you find. Let's break down exactly how to pull this off.
Steps 1 and 2 are all about perfecting the objective data. Because, look, garbage in, garbage out, right? If your measurement is sloppy, your training decisions will be sloppy. You have to measure your HRV within 10 minutes of waking up, stay in a seated or lying position, and make sure it is exactly the same position every single day. Do not eat, definitely do not drink caffeine yet, and please do not look at stressful work emails before the reading. Just breathe normally, don't try to force weird, deep breaths, and critically, use validated tools. We're talking about a chest strap like the Polar H10 paired with an app like HRV for training, rather than just relying on the optical wrist sensor on your watch, which can easily be thrown off by you just moving around in bed.
Step 3 is where you use that 0 to 10 PRS scale. And listen, this is the absolute golden rule. You must score your PRS before you even look at your HRV score on your phone. If you open the app and see a low HRV score first, it will psychologically bias you. You'll suddenly think, oh, I guess I'm tired. Don't do it. Sit quietly for 10 seconds, scan your body, check your motivation, feel out your muscle soreness, and gauge your mental energy. Give yourself an honest number between 0 and 10.
All right, step 4, time to adjust the plan. If your mechanic's intuition scores a 9 or a 10, you are fully recovered. Just like those fastest sprinters in the study, this is your green light for absolute maximum intensity. It is the perfect day to tackle explosive sprints or heavy max lifts. If you score a 7 or an 8, you're adequately recovered. You might have a tiny bit of lingering soreness, but you are totally cleared to proceed with your standard, planned training volume and intensity for that day.
But what happens when those scores drop? If you're sitting at a 5 or 6, you are moderately recovered, but you've got noticeable fatigue. You should definitely adjust down to moderate intensity and skip any high-velocity, explosive power movements that demand a super fresh nervous system. Now, a score of 3 or 4 means heavy limbs and poor recovery. Remember, if a sprinter wakes up with this score, statistically they are going to be slower that afternoon. You need to reduce your planned volume by about 40 to 60%, or maybe just swap the workout for active recovery, like an easy spin on the bike. And if you score a 0 to 2, that is systemic depletion. You need complete rest or maybe just some extremely light mobility work. Pushing through a 0 or 2 is literally how you end up overtrained, sick, or injured. Now, there is one absolutely crucial caveat to all of this. You have to establish a rolling 7-day baseline. Never ever panic or completely alter your long-term programming based on one single weird morning reading. Maybe you just slept in a weird position or had a late dinner. You are looking for multi-day trends. If your HRV is suppressed for 3 days in a row and your PRS is stuck down at a 4, that is when you execute a major deload in your training. Remember, data is a trend, not a single snapshot. Which really brings us to our final thought for today. Wearables are fantastic,
HRV gives you this incredible look inside your nervous system, and tracking these metrics can absolutely elevate your performance to the next level. But at the end of the day, they are just tools. A watch cannot fully interpret the insanely complex physiology, the fueling, and the hormonal status of a living, breathing human being. So I want to leave you with this question to chew on. Are you letting a piece of tech on your wrist override what your own body is screaming at you? Reclaim your intuition. Use the data to validate your self-awareness, not replace it. Start combining your morning HRV with your daily PRS and just watch your training quality transform. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.